Hi everyone, welcome back to the RM script where we left off last time. This time we'll be focusing on the terrain generation section of this map. For reference, this map here is what the end result is going to be, and where we left off last time was over here with just the terrain generation section of the map missing. For clarity purpose, I'll also remove the connections, which we'll put back later. So this will be where we're going to start from now. So when you're working with terrains, think of it like painting. The base of the map is ready for us, so we're going to overlay new terrains for our map based on what's already existing. Terrains are fairly intuitive, so let's get started. If we check back to the end result of the map, we see that the players' lands have been changed to dirt, and the middle has been changed to desert, and the in-between terrain has been changed to water. So back in our script, we start the terrain generation section. All caps and close and angle brackets, and a terrain command goes like this. Terrain, create terrain, and leave a space, and specify what terrain is going to be created. So we'll start by changing the terrain of the player's lands to dirt, so dirt will be the terrain we're creating. And this has attributes, so start attributes. And attributes for terrains include base terrain, land percent, number of clumps, and scaling. Okay, base terrain is fairly self-explanatory. In this case, we'll be overlaying the dirt on top of the water here. So our base terrain in this case is going to be water. Next, we'll specify land percent. In this case, we want to overlay all of the water with dirt, so this value will be 100. Now, the thing about terrains is you can't really control exactly where they're overlaid. It's all random. So what we've got with terrains is we can control the number of clumps. The default number of clumps is 1. So say we test our script now. We see only one of the player's islands, say, has been changed to dirt. And that's because terrains can't jump. We've only got one clump, so the script will generate as much terrain as it can while still fitting into one clump. So if we wanted to cover all of the other islands, we need more clumps. So say we were to increase this number of clumps to 1,000, say, and test it now. So now we see that all of the islands now have been changed to dirt. And now for the last attribute, which is scaling. This just defines how terrains will change with respect to map size. Setting scale by size keeps the number of clumps the same as map size increases, but the size of the clumps get bigger. And then scaling by groups will keep the size of the clumps the same as map size increases. It'll just create more clumps to keep up with the land percent. I usually scale by groups. It doesn't matter too much in this case, but it matters for statements we'll be doing later on. Okay, so now the player's lands have been changed to dirt. Similarly, we want the base terrain of this map to be overlaid here with water and the middle to be desert. So what we can do is we can just sort of copy this statement, since the effect we want to achieve is basically similar to the one we've just made. But what we're going to do here is change the terrain to be created to water, and the base terrain will be dirt 2, which is the base terrain of our map. Generate map, see what happens, and see how base terrain of the map has been overlaid with water. And similarly, we want to change the middle to desert terrain. So copy this command. We're going to create desert terrain on top of the medium water. But what I'm also going to do here is I'll add another attribute, and that's going to be a spacing attribute. So what this does is it provides a space between the terrain we're creating and any other terrain besides the base. So if we set this, say, at 5 and generate that, we see how the desert will overlay itself on top of the medium water, but it will stay at least 5 tiles away from the water since it's not the base. Now, it's important to note that order does matter when you're working with terrains. So say, for example, I was to switch the order of these commands, putting the water first and the dirt second. See, that doesn't do what we want at all. So if you see how, if we create the water first, that means the base terrain of the map will be water, and the terrain of the player's lands will also be water. They're able to touch. So now the terrain generation section can't distinguish between the player lands and everything else, and that's bad. So it's important to be sequential when you're working with terrains. Always ask yourself what's going to happen with each statement. So I'll just bring this back here. Okay, now that that's fixed, looks like we've made quite some progress at this point. So now the terrain to create will be the Palm Desert. So go back to our script. Create terrain Palm Desert. Base terrain here will be dirt. We'll set the land percent to be 12. When creating forests, 10 to 15% works well. You start running into problems if you're below 5 or above 30. For number of clumps, we'll set that at 32. For scaling, we'll scale by groups. And for spacing, we'll set that at 3. And this will just keep the trees from congesting the shoreline. And for forests, it's also good to have this attribute also, which is set avoid player start areas. This just prevents trees from being created on top of a TC. So this statement is done. Let's see how that changed things. Okay, so it's created our forests just like we would expect. And that's about all the functionality statements that are in this map. The only things left are purely aesthetic. So if we go back to our end result here, we can see that there's a couple grass patches that are created on top of the player's lands for a bit of variety on the land. And we want this medium water on top of the water to give a bit of variety there. So go back here. Just copy this. Grass 3 will be the terrain we're creating. The base terrain is already correct. Dirt. Land percent, we'll change that to 10. Number of clumps, change that to 24. Setting scale by groups is okay. And I don't need these either because I really don't care if the grass avoids the shoreline or if grass is underlaid underneath the player's TC. That works. And then overlaying medium water on top of the water, similarly like this statement. Medium water on top of water, and we'll give it a spacing of, say, 5. Yes, that works. Go back to our sample map, generate, and see how that worked. Okay, so that finishes up the terrain generation section of our map. There's a few other things I wanted to mention. So like I said before, not all of the game's terrains have predefined names that we can use. For example, if we wanted the base terrain of our map to be this, farm plowed, I can't just go up here, type farm plowed and expect that to work. See, that didn't do what we wanted. But what I can do is set up a constant. And what that looks like is this. Constant, leave a space, type the name that you want your numerical constant to be associated with, leave one space, and type the numerical constant of what our terrain is. In this case, it's 29. So we have that. And see how that successfully created the base terrain of the map to what we wanted. Okay, so you can see how that works. And also, if you haven't noticed already, the terrains I'm using here are not the standard terrains in the game. I'm using a terrain mod that I made myself, and if you like this, and you want to use it, I'll provide a link for that. And finally, in addition to that, there is also a mod that changes this road other terrain to a nice rocky texture, and it changes water other into this nice lava texture, and that is also made by me. So, yep, that's the gist of terrains. It's a fairly intuitive section. So, feel free to ask questions, give feedback, and I'll see you next time.